Why did the Democrats lose in 2024? You can practically hear Democrats scrambling, clawing around for excuses as they process how they blew this one. They'd rather blame external factors like voter apathy or disinformation than admit the truth, that it wasn't progressive ideas that voters rejected. It was the DNC's tired establishment routine. Let's be real. If Kamala Harris had embraced actual New Deal style economic plans, if she decided to stop playing the loyal soldier to Biden's sinking ship, she might have had a fighting chance. But instead, she chose the safe DNC approved route, sticking to the same neoliberal tactics that got us here in the first place, groveling to soft Republicans, refusing to back bold foreign policy stances like an arms embargo on Israel, and more or less telling the working class to take a hike. Picture this: FDR's sweeping economic reforms, making real investments in people instead of just billionaires' bottom lines. But no, Harris's campaign opted for the political equivalent of a wet paper towel. Biden handed her the keys just as the car was going off a cliff, and instead of grabbing the wheel, she doubled down on the very policies that had Democrats bleeding votes across every demographic. And here's the kicker. People actually wanted change. Democrats didn't lose because Americans suddenly swung hard right. They lost because, let's face it, their pitch was as stale as a week-old bagel. And if we don't learn from this, we'll be asking the same damn question 4 years from now. Let's cut the fluff. Voters in 2024 were looking for basic survival-level support. They wanted affordability, security, and a fair shot at healthcare that didn't involve selling a kidney. Instead, they got Democrats clutching their pearls about preserving the system, while millions of Americans can barely afford a trip to the grocery store. Imagine a government that actually tackled these issues head on. Radical concept, right? Here's a rundown of the progressive ideas that could have put the Democrats in the game. Universal health care, a living wage, price controls to rein in corporate greed, and FDR-style investments in public works to create good-paying jobs. Guess what? There's massive public support for all of this. But instead of getting bold solutions, voters got Kamala Harris timidly towing the establishment line like a scared intern on her first day on Capitol Hill.
Oopsie!
Economic security isn't a luxury. It's a right. And voters know it. They didn't need more tax breaks for billionaires and millionaires or vague promises to fight inflation while the same old insiders run the show. People wanted action on affordability, healthcare, and a government that understands living paycheck to paycheck isn't just a talking point, it's a brutal reality. But the Democrats gave us breadcrumbs, and now wonder why those same voters threw them to the curb. The bottom line, people want bold change. The Democrats offered us a lukewarm rerun of 2020. And so here we are, watching from the sidelines while the party scratches its head, wondering what empty platitudes and weak tea didn't win them the game this time. Kamala Harris ran her campaign the way a stand-in actor reads someone else's lines. Rigid, uninspired, and utterly tone-deaf to the needs of the audience. The moment she declared she wouldn't change Biden's approach, she sealed her fate. Voters weren't clamoring for a Biden sequel. Biden's approval ratings were circling the drain faster than a bad infomercial at 2 a.m. But Harris doubled down, hitching her campaign to the status quo that most Americans had already rejected. The reality is people were crying out for change. But Harris responded with a bland shrug and a promise to keep the machine chugging along as it always had. Inflation, healthcare, rent, and all spiraling out of control. And her big idea? Let's just stick with what's not been working. The choice to align with Biden was like offering voters a bowl of cold oatmeal and calling it a 5-star meal. Instead of rallying behind progressives' plans that spoke to the people's real problems, Harris treated her campaign like a press release for the Biden administration. And as polls tanked, it became clear she didn't lose because people hated her policies. They never even got that far. She lost because voters knew without a doubt that under her, nothing would change. Harris's campaign wasn't just flawed. It was a masterclass in missing the point. By clinging to Biden's wildly unpopular status quo, she handed Trump an easy win. While Americans screamed for a leader with vision, Harris offered us a rerun of the exact show we were desperate to cancel. Picture this: a Democratic Party that actually fights for the working people. It's not just a nostalgic fantasy. It was once the bedrock of their identity. When FDR rolled out the New Deal, he wasn't tiptoeing around, worried about offending millionaires and billionaires or kowtowing to corporate interests. Those people considered FDR to be a traitor to his class.
Certified badass.
He was a bulldozer for the American working people, smashing through the Great Depression with jobs programs, Social Security, and a legacy of lasting reform that transformed the country. His plan wasn't just popular, it was powerful, resonating with the backbone of America's workforce. They didn't elect him 4 times for no reason. Fast forward to 2024, and Democrats had the perfect setup to revive that spirit. With Americans drowning in healthcare costs, housing crises, and stagnant wages, an FDR-style New Deal would have been like a lifeline tossed to a sinking ship. But instead, Harris and her team couldn't see past the glow of the corporate boardroom long enough to recognize that people really wanted change. Imagine if the Democratic Party had the guts to propose sweeping economic reform instead of just another bland, forgettable administration and a few scraps of policy disguised as progress. An FDR-style approach wouldn't just have spoken to voters, it would have roared. Voters wanted bold moves, structural change, a government that works for them, not against them. In the end, the Democrats didn't just miss the boat. They didn't even make it to the dock. They could have channeled FDR's unapologetic people-first momentum. But instead, they played it safe and got wiped out. The New Deal wasn't just an economic plan. It was a vision, a commitment to the people. And in 2024, that was the Democrats' golden ticket, and they let it slip through their fingers.
This is our time. You already know, I ain't gotta tell them why. Get your hands to the sky.
Let's get one thing clear. Voters want real change, not the same reheated centrist sludge the DNC keeps slinging. Poll after poll shows progressive policies are exactly what people crave. Medicare for all, broadly supported. Jobs program, backed by a significant majority. Affordable housing initiatives. Voters are practically begging for it. We're tired of pay-to-play politics and solutions that look more like band-aids on bullet wounds than actual fixes. But what does the DNC offer? Establishment-approved, corporate-friendly policies that are as inspiring as a beige wallpaper. Their so-called solutions, tiny tax credits here, vague pledges there, barely scratch the surface of what people need. Establishment Democrats talk about preserving stability. But stability is about a better future, not just a longer sentence in the economic hell that we're all trapped in. Voters are tired of empty words and incremental tweaks. These don't even keep pace with inflation. We're ready for a government that actually works for us. But the DNC, they're still stuck in the 90s, operating on the illusion that we're all just one common sense compromise away from utopia. Meanwhile, the rest of us in the country have moved on, and the DNC's approach is about as appealing as lead-laced cake frosting. If the Democrats want to win, they need to wake up to reality. Establishment policies are stale and uninspiring, and completely out of touch with the American people. Voters aren't asking for a polite nod. They're demanding an overhaul. Progressive policies that offer vision, and the data proves it. But the DNC, they'd rather play it safe. Whisper sweet nothings about electability and watch voters sprint into the arms of anyone bold enough to actually offer them a change of any kind, clinging to the middle like a lovesick incel who just got laid for the first time. The Democrats have a choice. They can either keep fumbling around in the dark, clinging to the same uninspired playbook, or they can finally take a lesson from leaders like FDR. Leaders who didn't just talk about change, they rewrote the whole damn book. To win, they need to stop pandering to their biggest donors and start speaking to the real base. Working people, younger voters, and independents who don't want more of the same. The answer isn't a recycled slogan or another elite-approved plan. It's rolling up the sleeves and fighting for the policies that people are begging for. Affordable healthcare, fair wages, a real economic security plan. Because if they're not willing to take that stand, well, 2024 is just the beginning of their losing streak. So here we are, wrapping up a dissection of one of the most avoidable defeats in recent political history. If there's one takeaway here, it's this. Voters are screaming for change, and the party that claims to represent them isn't listening. The DNC would rather court donors and play nice with moderates than actually hear out the people it's supposed to fight for. But here's the thing. Democracy isn't about party politics. It's about the people. And if the Democrats want to stop hemorrhaging support, they're going to have to start prioritizing us over their cozy donor dinners. Now I'm curious to hear what you think. Was it the establishment's chokehold on the party, or was there something else at play? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is far from over. Thanks for joining me here at the Bold Moose Network. Eyes open, voices loud.